perfectly on time. Hello. Good morning, everyone. I am Avery Aknini from Vayner. I'm thrilled to be here in probably the most famous location in all the Vayner offices, Gary's own office, with two of our fabulous leaders from the media team, Jon and Ben. Can y'all introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Jon Morgenstern. Everyone calls me JMO, at least within Vayner Media. I'm ostensibly the head of investment, so all things media buying, but really these days that covers innovation, organic search and social and paid search. Ben and I will get into this. There's a lot going on, but I've been at Vayner a decade, and this is a new era we're in. So it merited its own little hour chat with these two characters.
I think this is the hottest topic. Ben, introduce yourself.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Ben Allison, EVP of Media, along with Jon Morgenstern and Haley Riggle, help lead our media discipline with a focus on delivery, operations, and activation.
Okay, great. So to give everyone a little bit of context, like most marketers, Google is a huge media investment platform for Vayner Media and for our clients. And search is an incredibly important channel in driving both acquisition and full funnel. But the world of search is changing very rapidly. I think we all know this as consumers. People are using ChatGPT, they're using Perplexity, they're using different large language models, and they're still using Google. But the search landscape, the sands are shifting under our feet. Guys, as folks who advise some of the biggest advertisers in the world about how search is changing and where to put their media dollars, tell me a little bit about the era that we're in.
Yeah, so I would say let's pull up the amazing turnkey over here. Yeah, so we had an AI offsite with Gary himself 2 days ago, where he really hammered home this point, which is just like in the early 90s, where he was in college, the internet came about, and that first picked his interest and became a mega trend. And this is how he outlined it to us. We obviously saw how the internet itself played out. The second being kind of social, mobile. We're, in his mind, in our mind, in a lot of the growing consensus in the industry, we're in like a onset of a fourth new paradigm of the, what do you call it, the AI era, agentic, AI everything, or whether you just put a near-term search AI focused lens on it, where we're in the start of the upward bell curve of like just a fundamental shift of how the internet itself works and how connected commerce and brand marketing, brand communication works. So it is a enormous magnitude sort of conversation, but a big part of today's hour. And this whole deck, which we're happy to share to whomever's watching, is focused on is like practicality.
Yeah.
The today, the tomorrow morning, but then also like the long-term future, since that's so much of the game.
And a little bit of a finer point on that, it's the magnitude of it is so large because it's a fundamental restructuring of the business model and the shared value exchange between aggregators like Google and publishers, content creators, brands, and the relationship between sourcing of content or information, but sending traffic, and the restructuring of that business model just has like enormous downstream ramifications in terms of both just from a marketing perspective, but I mean, even more so on publisher content IP side of things. So it's an exciting place, right? It's an opportunity to kind of start from day zero and think about where things can go in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, this is as big as the internet, as big as computers, as big as mobile. Like it's like that, where it's going to impact absolutely everything. But during this webinar, we're going to talk about how it's going to impact both paid and organic search, which is already something that we're seeing. Ben, Jon, tell me a little bit about the size and scale of this shift as it relates to search, as it relates to 2025.
Let's jump.
Like this is certainly not like, double digits yet, or is it?
No, I mean, we're estimates vary, of course. Our estimates, the main important thing that's started to happen this year that this Google Search Console Insight shows for some figures we pulled is that really as of like March 2025, Google's been making, a lot of this conversation is going to be synonymous with Google for now.
Love our friends at Google, by the way.
Yeah, big shout out to Google. Really as of March 25, there's a meaningful enough update to proliferate AI overviews, the widget in the Google search results page that kind of just gives you the whole summary, your answer, what you're looking for. There's also AI mode, but since March, we've really seen this more meaningfully diverge, where organic search referral traffic for most advertisers across most verticals, there's always exceptions, has started to erode at least slightly. We'd place that right now in the high single digits range. That's clicks from organic search results. Paid for now is a tomorrow conversation. There's really no, if OpenAI was ripping on scaling their ads business, that's a different thing. But paid will kind of lag organic. But the two are interrelated, and you can look at what's happening in organic as a bit of a canary in the coal mine situation. Organic search clicks, traffic eroding a bit as more folks just get what they're looking for more easily just from these answers themselves. However, search visibility, your brand showing up, whether it's in a chatbot answer, whether it's in an AI overview box, that's in the purple here versus the blue being traffic. So there's a mixed bag of like, hey, yes, as AI subsumes more of the web, we're not dealing in big blue hyperlinks. It's more like very minute link citations. Yeah, on the margin, that's going to decrease average organic traffic. It doesn't mean that your brand can't have as strong, if not better than ever, awareness, visibility, even total business coming from the channel, because there's also a traffic quality conversation to be had around what's happening and what is starting to erode first, which from what Ben and I have been seeing have been the lowest value traffic. It's a different conversation when that eats into meaningful.
We're kind of hitting all the high notes here though, but I think an important framing, or I'm curious also your input and opinion on this, but I think it's everyone needs to be able to hold two things like intellectually at the same time in their heads of right now, the actual impact is not that large. Like LLM search behavior is maybe in the high single digits in terms of total kind of internet queries. We estimated at about 7.5%. And I think the way a lot of people are talking, it comes across as though maybe it's 30%, 40%, and it's like the world's over. And so being able to hold that in your head, but also look at the trajectory and the fundamental value or the paradigm of this new modality, this new technology, which it's not that difficult to forecast that out, is like, oh, well, the train is moving on the tracks quickly. And so the doomsday event is maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, but we're not there yet. It's just all signs are pointing to that. And so I think a lot of people get lost in the sauce a little bit of, oh, right now, ChatGPT has 50% of market share, and it doesn't. It's, you're looking at still like a relatively small subset of total kind of internet queries. But the pace of adoption and the rate of change is fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that I want to bring this to a very practical level, because we're all very familiar with how this sort of consumer behavior shift has happened. But the way that it worked before, if I'm looking for iced coffee in New York City, I search on Google and Google search Google.com, because Google has also multiple apps. I might see like 10 blue links that says it's Joe's Coffee, it's Starbucks, there's a local brewery place like right around me. That's how it used to work. Now I might search, or this is still how it works. So that is the sort of Google.com search experience. If I put that same exact query into ChatGPT and say like iced coffee near me, New York City, it will recommend maybe like one or two that won't be that same experience. It will suggest something and maybe give me context into why I would like it, because that large language model understands Avery. They might say like, oh, you really want to go to Jack's Stir Brew Coffee because that's your favorite kind, because it knows that about me. That is two different search behaviors versus Google is giving everyone the same results. Yes, it's influenced by certain things, but more or less that's heavily influenced by paid search, which are the blue links at the top, versus ChatGPT currently is not influenced by, it's influenced by different factors, but not with paid ads. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, for ChatGPT, very true from an ad standpoint. It's starting to have the early days of like, are you a merchant and have you integrated your product catalogs? You might like.
There's no integrating an iced coffee currently.
No, and that's where I wanted to pull this up. And Ben, this is really, I think you can outline this well. Of in that specific example of like a near me local type recommendation. If you're already using ChatGPT like every day as part of your life, and the more context it has, the more it really becomes your personalized assistant. That's a bit of a different thing. But from what we're seeing so far, things like local shop, like there's asymmetric disruption happening of whether it's Google disrupting themselves or ChatGPT disrupting of query types. But Ben, you should.
Yeah, I think like I would almost reframe it instead of the iced coffee one, because all these other vectors get introduced as like, think of it as I want a recipe.
Yeah.
And like 2 years ago, then you're getting, I want to make banana bread. And there's 10 blue links. And so you go to, foodrecipes.com and it's like all these ads and whatever. And you're going, and that's the user flow of like best banana recipe, easy. And you click on one of the links, you go to the website, and now, and even the way that website
Pillsbury is sponsoring it,
and the website, the way they're
content,
monetizing, they're selling ads, etc. Now, in this kind of new functionality, it's just giving you all that information. Step one, here are all the ingredients. Step two, and that's right in that initial interface.
I might say, don't forget to get your protein, Ben, because I know you've got these goals, because the model has that context on you.
Exactly. And so that's really the shift there of like, in a lot of instances, there's no need to go actually to the original content source. And that original content source is not owned in the same sense, top to bottom. It can be amalgamated across a bunch of different sources and personalized and those kind of things. All of this is a shift from keyword as the primary currency of like indicating, it's banana bread. And even the way Google has evolved over the last 10 years, we've seen, query behavior has changed, near me, local, like all these different things. And
iced coffee near me.
Yeah. But this is like a seismic shift of distorting out of keyword into context.
Okay. So let's talk about how we're talking a little bit about SEM and how this is evolving. Let's talk about SEO, because if I am a recipe content maker or I'm a brand, how should I be thinking about my SEO initiatives? Because all that like backlinks, black magic science, how are people thinking about SEO these days?
Yeah, I mean, that's one where first I would say there's always a new ad tech cottage industry popping up that just becomes like blisteringly hot. And not to throw shade on that, I think right now it's right that this is happening. But there's the existing SEO ad tech players like an SEMrush, an Ahrefs that have been in this game that are steering their ship to accommodate net new players that they just had, like Perplexity, which didn't exist, but also new metrics, which we can get into is in terms of like share of model and visibility versus traffic. There's those players, and then there's Profound and Noatoa and like so many new SEO players that proffer help in this area.
With a focus on AI optimization,
yes.
AIO.
Yes.
So is AIO is the new SEO, or are they sort of married?
They're married. I think there's like one mental leap that everyone needs to go on in the next 3 months, which is historically SEO has been synonymous with organic referral traffic.
Yep.
And that will not work. You will hit so many roadblocks of what are we sharing with the CFO and how are we benchmarking and what's our conversion rates? Like that is dead. And whatever the specific is, a share of model, different metrics and how you're calculating, what partners you're using. But fundamentally, you need to think about like search impressions, brand visibility. Like it opens up the aperture in terms of the funnel because you just want to show up in the right way and have your brand, what's the sentiment around that, right? Is it being recommended? And a lot of that, what historically would have been organic search traffic, and that's the unit that you're measuring, and you're saying, are we up or are we down? And building your entire SEO ecosystem around that. Now it needs to equally embrace brand visibility, share of model, impressions, like all of these metrics, which live in the rest of marketing, but historically have not lived in a search ecosystem.
So right before we got on this call, I was actually asking you, like, how are we tracking this? Because we know how to track like share of search and all of that, impression share on Google and of course in the other search engines, Microsoft, Bing, et cetera. But now Yahoo's back as well. So there is a very codified way to do that. How are we tracking that using these like new formats of search?
Yeah, I mean, we're still, we're always vetting new players that pop up that may or may not be able to leapfrog the incumbents in this area. and
But the incumbents are playing here too, right?
Yeah. So like we've at Vayner, not to say that this is the right or wrong way to do it for
It's the right way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If Gary's here, he'd be like, yeah, the right way. No question. We use SEMrush.
Yep.
Everything is always a balance of the yesterday, the today, and tomorrow. Today, SEO is still it's still helpful to have those things. It's helpful to have SEO, and whether you call it AEO or AI SEO or GEO, it's helpful to have that unified picture. GEO is generative engine optimization. Yeah.
Understood.
A lot of
I learned it in terms of
there's a trillion.
But I think the point is, and it's a little reference to what I was saying before, we think of this as the much larger task as a mindset shift and reframing how we think about benchmarking, what metrics we're using. And there's just so much that's changing right now. So we've essentially optimized on existing partner sets, ease of implementation. Can it integrate with how we already think about dashboarding and all those kind of things? And really are focused on the change management, if you will, of like the mindset shift of, we just need to rethink the way that we engage with this.
I think it all starts, our belief at Vayner is it all starts with the consumer behavior, right? So of course we need to have all these KPIs and we have all these acronyms and we have all the dashboards, but it all starts with how are consumers fundamentally using this technology to make their lives better, whether it is identifying recipes for banana bread, finding a nice coffee, selecting a bank partner, whatever it is. How do we think about that journey? And then, of course, how is the organic experience? How is the paid experience? And how can our brand partners integrate there in a way that drives their business results while adding value to their ultimate customers? So let's talk a little bit. You had a slide, John, that was in short. Let's pull up the in short slide because these two are very smart and they can use a lot of big words. So let's kind of recap where we are right now.
Yeah, I think
you take one, you take the other.
Yeah, I'll take the left, you take the right. Great. Yeah, you crush the right. Ben said this earlier, but while today conversational AI might be 7-8% of share of queries, and that's putting paid aside, paid Google is still particularly dominant. The year-on-year rate of change, and this is now as we comp years where ChatGPT and others have been pretty scaled. By some accounts, ChatGPT is still growing 180% year on year in terms of query, time spent, DAU, however you look at it, versus Google, by some accounts, estimates is flat to down maybe 1 or a couple points. So,
but with AIO,
with growth in their new school things, right?
Yes.
Google's whole game is can they baton handoff from one to the other, but
I want to double click into that because Ben and I were having a really interesting connection with our partners at Google. And even though this disruption is happening, search is actually still up. And they were showing us this, globally, search is still up. Part of that is driven by their new AI offering. And part of it is there is still incremental growth just in search.
Yes. When you look at their whole picture, Google has a very healthy setup. It's kind of like looking at a network just on linear TV when they have a CTV streaming platform that's growing. It's if you just look at the one, it's a different picture then. But
I think that is a piece of truth that people need to deeply understand. Even while this disruption is happening and this consumer behavior shift is happening, Google search is still growing globally. It as a combination of their AI assisted overviews plus their core product.
Plus AI mode plus Gemini.
Exactly.
Yeah. They had loads of updates.
They have loads of updates. So absolutely do not count on Google. I see a lot of sensationalist content on platforms like YouTube. It's Google search is over. It is certainly not. However, balancing that today and tomorrow is that journey that we're on.
Yeah. And to get to the right side. And it's look, some people are going to engage with this in the minute detail and, but for kind of Gen Pop, and if you're looking
early adopters do not equal normal people.
Exactly. And if you're looking to filter what's, noise and what's signal, I would say the most interesting thing to do is watch Google because this entire game is going to play out on, to John's point, on whether Google can baton hand and go from the best business model in the history of capitalism and innovate into a new consumer behavior, a superior consumer product, potentially at the expense of existing revenue streams. And they're in it right now. They're doing it, right? You're seeing AIO grow, but we touched on this slide before. Like right now, it's in low value keywords.
Yeah.
So there's some point in the next, I would say, 12 months when all that inventory starts to be eaten up, right? These are low value keywords. People would go to
banana
a site.
bread is a cheap click, but
Exactly.
versus like, health insurance
Sign up
for
for a credit
executive is
card.
different.
Is different. And so at some point, maybe 12 months, that's a very nebulous timeline, but that inventory is going to be eaten up. And what does Google do then? And have they figured out how to monetize, or are they willing to cannibalize revenue? And will shareholders accept that? All of those things. That's the tipping point to watch. Like right now, it's Google's game to lose.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, I would say, when you're thinking about signal and noise, is like the one to look at is ChatGPT and the OpenAI. Obviously, their corporate structure is funky, but Microsoft becomes an interesting player. But there's so much just in terms of product and feature development, even on a weekly basis. Of this model's better, this model's better, and I would say look at ChatGPT and to some extent Microsoft, and they're kind of well positioned. But really, the player to watch is Google, and it's kind of their game to lose.
Yeah.
Can they innovate out of this?
Yeah, because Google has, in addition to just like the search dominance it continues to enjoy overall, it has other assets that are.
What's the number 2 search engine in the world?
YouTube. It has, but even more than that, it has Chrome, like the browser now we're getting into agentic, but like whoever owns the browser, it's not.
We'll have to have a separate conversation on agentic. That could be a whole thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to keep us focused here. So we just talked about sort of state of the space right now. And I think our perspective is quite balanced, and we need to understand it all and really align with the big players. So how are we advising clients? Like what should clients do right now?
Let's go to the brass tacks.
All right. Brass tacks it is.
I mean, we can read some of these bullets. I think honestly, there's if you embrace the fact that no matter what partner wins, right? It's ChatGPT, it's Claude, it's Grok, it's Google innovates out of this, whatever it might be. I would bet that it's somewhat a foregone conclusion that a material amount, let's just say 50% of internet-based queries, the responses to those are going to be sourced using technology that looks like LLMs, right?
Yep.
The information just there. It's kind of predicted what the follow-up question would be, and just because that's a superior user experience. And I think that's probably a few years out. So if you think of that, everything else kind of follows downstream. There's kind of 2 things that you need to consider. One is generally the mindset and the capabilities to win in that, right? Relative to your competitors, which goes a little bit to what we were saying of how to think about measuring. It's like, okay, impressions, brand visibility, all these things matter now because that traffic's not going to go to your site, but you want to show up there in that consideration set. The other thing, which it's like, honestly, I think it's a little too early, is who's going to be those winners, right? Where do we need to win on ChatGPT? Is it Perplexity, et cetera? And I would say right now, the smart bet there is build around the future with Google. I think there's a high likelihood that they're going to retain some material amount of market share and then hedge a few bets. ChatGPT is probably like, if you're limited on resources, it's like, all right, get really focused on ChatGPT. But there's some check the box elements of like integrate your merchant feeds.
Yeah.
Like there's things
Let's talk
that you
about that.
should just
Let's
be
talk about
doing
the merchant
well.
feeds. You brought this up. I think this is super important for clients,
Yeah.
like retailers who are, hey, where do I get a cool summer scarf?
Yeah.
How do we do this?
Like starting at like the most basic, there's the question of like robots.txt. Like, does your site, are you cool with your site getting scraped?
Crawled, yeah.
Are you like going to use that as an advantage versus, Cloudflare is de facto opting out of that for, we're not getting into like what Cloudflare does, but there's like that simple of a, how much are you just embracing, just like when it came to placing the Facebook conversion pixel years ago, it was like, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah.
There's that. Our view tends to be that the walled gardens, there's a gravitational pull, kind of an inevitability.
Yep.
Publishers are their own thing. We're talking to brands here. That's like the 101. Even if you don't understand what do we have today on our properties, do we opt in up? Like you should know that. Another tactile piece really relevant for commerce is the merchant programs, like the beginning of attempted disruption of what Google enjoys with shopping or Amazon, of millions of e-com merchants having their product catalogs, their inventory, all sorts of data.
I have a hot take on that because I am a person who, you guys know, loves fashion and shopping and always, looking at new interesting things. I think that ChatGPT is terrible for recommending links.
So
they're always broken.
Here's the thing. So like, just like
I in fact want to find things to discover and buy, and it does not work.
Just like Google's search advantage, it's their game to lose. Google Merchant Center, the millions of every brand is like that. They have integration. Perplexity with their merchant program, OpenAI with theirs. They've started their own versions and they're trying to gain adoption. But that's where it's
is that why the links are broken? Because those merchants have not integrated their feeds properly?
Yeah, it's only even possible to integrate that properly.
Understood.
And Google has years of.
And there's structuring. So this is probably another session, but the structuring of those feeds, you need to make sure that the reviews and it's in a certain format. So yes, this short answer is those are breaking because it's they're structured.
They break a lot.
Data a certain way. And so, but those are tactical things that
what we think
would say, and from a brand side is lean in the next 2 to 3 months and
great.
Sort
so
out
you're a retailer brand, you're a brand who sells a physical product online. You should be making sure your feeds are set up to be read by ChatGPT and these other large language models in the appropriate format, because currently the way that it links often breaks.
Yeah, there's twofold. One is there's a form to submit to Perplexity to get in their merchant program, and same with OpenAI. That's easy, but you have to technically do a step.
You have to opt in.
Terms.
Yeah,
exactly.
Then there's the broader thing of we've seen this movie before of it's gonna be export your Google Merchant Center feed and import it here. They're gonna make it as easy as possible to transfer it. But for Google and all these guys, there's the optimization of the catalogs of make the descriptions of each product better, real-time availability, enrich the catalog.
Let's talk about that too, because I've seen many brands are actually restructuring the way that they describe their products. I think I sent this to you guys this week for CeraVe or Cetaphil, one of those brands where they've actually rewritten their product description to be more SEO friendly, searching in the language that consumers use when they're looking for skincare.
Yes.
Is that something we should expect from many brands?
Yeah, I mean, that's as true for shopping and making sure that all the items you sell, you're giving as much rich and up-to-date real-time information as possible. But that's also true more broadly. And this kind of goes back to the SEO
They credited the rewriting to being because of AI. They were optimizing that description because of AI, because of how consumers search.
For sure.
So for a B2B company like VaynerMedia, who has a lot of our own vocabulary, how do you, that is not necessarily aligned to industry standard, how do you think about that? Do we use our language and also common industry terms?
So I'm gonna struggle to not go on a tangent on this one.
Yeah.
This is where Gen AI becomes relevant too. There's now more ability than ever to just we can be making so many articles, blog posts that are keyword rich with all of.
Oh, and we will be as a result of this.
And all of the relevant keywords in terms of going in the industry.
Yep.
So can everyone else. How much of that is hey, the tide rises, the new standard is your 10x, but it's kind of a wash. Sure, it'll get reshuffled with some folks who do that earlier or better. But as with all, it's what just becomes zero sum, where it's just AI jargon versus what's alpha, or what is truly novel information.
I'm glad you went there, because I actually think this gets back to our core thesis on marketing of distinctive assets.
Yes.
Because if everyone says the exact same thing,
it's a wash.
That's not unique. That doesn't make you stand out. That is our belief at Vayner, and we're the biggest fans of brand building. And I think especially in the era of AI, everyone can put things in and generate the same type of copy that's just vanilla.
Exactly.
I think this is a slight off ramp on the original question, but there is an interesting thing. If we go back to how are you playing this chessboard, and just thinking about unique assets. So Google, if Google's winning, YouTube is, or it's theoretically on the backs of their unique asset, which is YouTube, and all that video and the ability to, transcribe and all the metadata around that. And so you're okay, that becomes interesting, right? For VaynerMedia, what do we do now is make 1,000 YouTube videos, look at top YouTube searches around B2B marketing, impact of search, and frame all of that.
Answer the question.
Exactly. Because it's all right, well, if Google, you play out the chess pieces, and AIO, and they're going to continue to grow that. And like, what are they sitting on top that's unique relative to a lot of these other models? It's YouTube. So that's an interesting play. Reddit, there's been on and off again, on Reddit, but Quora, Wikipedia, reviews, product reviews, like where there are kind of key data assets, which are a little bit separate and aside from my own website,
Yes.
but just looking at the internet more broadly and saying, oh, these are data rich sources where you have naturally ways that this has been peer moderated or reviewed, or it's, unique information, subject matter expertise, like all those kind of things are, I think, good leading indicators around like where to think about resource allocation.
Much wider aperture of not just SEO is like, our website.
Yeah.
And like, yes, brands think about their holistic organic presence to some extent today, but in the LLM AI where it's looking across all of these things, also where different players have their own like favoritism / advantage, YouTube with Google.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, for brands that have been taking Gary and VaynerMedia's recommendation of like be making organic TikToks and Reels, and you like
a high volume of content,
that is now just like a de facto benefit.
Yeah.
And this one interesting signal of where this is going is what Meta announced with Instagram around indexing all business and creator content as of July 10th, which signals that they're like leaning in to that training data on behalf of brands.
I think that's really interesting. And Ben, I love that like you took it to the strategic point of the fundamentals haven't changed. Look at what people are searching for, create content that delivers against that. Put that on your website, put that on your social channels, put that on your YouTube. That is how people are going to organically find you. Even if the platform has shifted, the strategy should remain the same. And I'm sure in time we'll be able to also see what are the top trending searches on ChatGPT and reverse engineer that.
Yeah, like Google Marketing Live in 2 months ago, and they like nailed that point like 6 times over of like, the fundamentals are the same, provide value.
Yes.
And if you do that, like
if you try to game the system, you're going to get a hands off of it.
There's like short term, okay, in the next 3 months, and you can do this, and you can flood the zone, and you can do all these things, which is effectively backlinking and all these, but at the models and the systems like optimize and iterate out of that, and it becomes table stakes and parity, and then everybody's at 0. So there are short term, 3-6 month windows where you can get outsized share and visibility, but it's not really a long term strategy to think about like, all right, how do I hack into the back of this? The real thing is, I go back to like fundamentally rethinking, okay, search now, really SEO is like the visibility, the impression. How do I think about measuring that? Like that's, all right, now we come back to MTA and match market models and MMM, like all these structural things around attribution. And what if it is a 2-player system where, OpenAI or Microsoft now has 40%, right? All these SEO and SEM teams have been built around Google having 95% market share. What does it mean when there's 2 different advertising products, terms of service, ways of measuring, all those kind of things? Like that's the big organizational shift that needs to take place over the next 18 months.
Yeah.
So interesting. And I'm sure we could spend all day talking about this. I also want to double click into this bullet that you guys have around AI chatbots are becoming the new storefronts, because I was giving that example of like shopping for a scarf or something like that, but it's also in the professional services industry, right? Like I'm looking for recommendations of where to go on vacation, to discover new things. Talk to me a little bit about how that behavior is shifting, and then also how brands can start to influence that.
Yeah, and we covered off on the shopping, commerce, merchant element showing up there, and then also the ChatGPT's perplexities trying to get in that game, and including payments. And I'll try not to get into agentic, since I know that, but I would say it's kind of no different than when the iPhone came out and the App Store was released.
Literally, an agent is actually recommending you. Oh, John, you like this. This goes with your style, right? Like that's a fundamentally pretty different thing.
Yeah, I mean, all the way through, like I've bought and shipped these 6 things to you. Like these 3 you might not like, like that much. It's going to take a while, but similar to like when, if ever, should we make like an app for after like iPhone and App Store came out? It's the same idea for like native apps or embeds or things that kind of live.
We've seen this before. Like the difference on this is when you think about the growth of the internet, the relationship between websites and Google, it was so symbiotic.
Yes.
And so that core business model, rose.
Google's fundamental premise was to organize the world's information and make it useful.
Exactly. And there was a value exchange there of we will make it easier for you to be found and we will pass along that traffic and you can monetize through ads and, commerce and all these other things. And so, but there were other things that came, apps, right? Oh, this is now a new way to engage with our business. Social, right? We talked this was a few years ago, but like TikTok is a new storefront or social and how your brand shows up there. And this is, a huge piece of attention. Amazon, right? You think about that. It's like there have been that a brand or a storefront has been fractured over the last 25 years. And there are actually 4, 5, 6 storefronts.
Those were like mini disruptors. This is more
macro. But all of those were tangential to the core business model. So they're additive.
Yeah.
So you saw a little bit of cannibalization here or there, but it didn't actually disrupt that core symbiotic relationship around website as being the hub of that. And that's why this feels different, is that, that core thing that all of this drafted off of is now maybe going to go through that process where the chatbot is your, TikTok handle. It is the place where your brand shows up and you're only getting a little bit off the back end, only like the highest value downstream ready to convert. And the rest of it, you're essentially handing over the keys to the car to another system. And that's like, it cuts to the core of the entire structure that all this.
And the only real like durable advantage is just like agility, where, to use the app example, say, your Perplexity, there's like the race for, some tutoring business.
Yeah.
And you're the first player to like build or most natively, most Perplexity friendly sort of build that thing. You'll enjoy the benefits of like outsized share of that sphere, but over time, like it'll just get, and then it just comes down to like the most value additive source, like the best player wins. We're gonna, for some time, it's gonna be who can just be the most consistently agile. Gary was talking about this on Monday. Like every day, it's hard to even place a macro big bet, a multi-year contract with any player, especially the new crop, because when it's like, oh, they have the best model, go. The next day it can be like, DeepSeek came out. Yeah. So agility is, and this is Vayner's always about agility, but like that's really, and then playing the field is.
Yeah. And that's where I think that they're like signal versus noise, like agile in the micro. Okay. This came out, let's structure and let's win, if we're that tutoring business, let's win that. Cause you've got a 6-9 months, right? It can have a real impact on your business. And also, though, siphoning off and understanding what are the larger things, reframing the way that we think about measurement, embracing an idea of actually a lot of traffic now is going to go into an AI chatbot. So what does that mean? How do we need to show up? There are like fundamental organizational shifts, and those can become multi-year initiatives, right? Because you need to build those behaviors, you need to build those capabilities, but is it model A versus model B? Like that's where it's agility of week in, week out. You need to kind of see how quickly you can move to adopt.
I also think that it'll be interesting to see when a client is like, hey, like, what just happened? Because we sold out of this lip gloss or something like that. And that search traffic is like coming from OpenAI. I was chatting to somebody in the industry and they told me they actually got a client who found them on ChatGPT. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Right now, those are kind of like outliers, and like our thinking is that like those will more and more become the norm.
Yes, and while the volume might not supplant the legacy total traffic volume of Google Organic today, we're seeing anecdotes all over the place, including from Google's AI products. The quality of the traffic is meaningfully higher.
I think we should like unpack that, because what you guys are referring to is sort of like broad match terms. It might even be like, say I searched just like iced coffee, and then it was coming up with like, oh, here's like a ready to drink, and then here's a recipe to make it. that's too wide, right? When you are referring to high value, you mean very specific terms with high commercial intent?
It's more that like, given all the context, that when it does give a citation or a recommendation that a user opts for, the conversion rate is like super high of the thing. Whether it's
because it knows more about
exactly.
you, so it's going to give you a better recommendation.
Exactly.
This is what you mean, Jon Morgenstern.
Yes, exactly.
And this visual, I think, if you look at the delta between the blue and the pink, and on the y-axis here, you see like informational, research-based, purchase-led, navigational, local intent. Informational would be like, what's the best iced coffee? Not a very high intent keyword. Like if you just think about Google, I mean, this is how they're tracking and thinking about bid prices and all those. Like it doesn't clear very much.
No.
People don't tend to convert or
10 cents
whatever.
Not a big deal.
Wikipedia. So there's a high delta here. The pink is 2025 share. So these are for this type of query, was the response from Google a standard 10 blue links, right? Standard hyperlink, or was it AI overviews? And you can see in blue, this is in 2020. So effectively like 100% of this was 10 blue links.
Right.
And in 2025, that's dropped by like 30%.
Yeah.
Right. So like 30% of those type of things, but these are low value keywords.
Yeah.
So this is where it goes to, it actually might not have a ton of like direct impact on how many units you're selling on your website. Like your organic traffic might be down 8%, but your sales are maybe only down 1%.
Yeah.
And that, the thing to watch is at some point this inventory, the low value inventory, is going to kind of all be eaten up. And like, what does Google do there? Right now, people are like, all right, I want to buy this, and are they going to source that? If they don't, from an advertising perspective, right? If you're not seeing that behavior come through in their AI products, it's like, all right, start to put your chips on ChatGPT or others. But there's still a good bit of runway, I would say, on like the low value and mid value kind of.
Yeah, and I think probably everyone who's watching this webinar knows that, but like that is Google's business. Like that is how they afford all the expensive moonshots that they do, is really based on the Google search business, which is probably the most profitable business ever invented.
Yeah. Like the biggest innovator's dilemma of all time. And on the local, I love this chart. On the local intent, this is yet another area where it's Google's game to lose. They have Google Maps. They have Google My Business. It's like they have, when that is used more and adopted more.
Monopoly who?
But like they just announced, and they had taken a crack at this like a few years ago, and there was some pushback, but now automated AI phone calls. So like local, I would say the reason why there's low adoption here is more a function of like structured data and ability to service that. Now there's a feature of like, I want to look at dry cleaners near me and automated AI phone calls, because maybe those businesses haven't put their store hours in, or they haven't put in information around, do they do, can they handle linen, or do they do couches, or whatever it might be. And now this can kick off automated AI phone calls to those businesses to source that information. It starts with like, this is an AI, information. This is the information we're looking for. That business can then respond.
Or it's AI. It's just
Which,
AI. It can be AI.
Yeah, exactly. And then it can source and essentially structure that data to then provide the recommendation. Be like, this is the best dry cleaner to go to near you.
I think that's a perfect example, Ben, because it really brings like our closing points here of you need to have your information organized so that these large language models are ready to read it and take it. And that also comes into creating content that says we service linen, we do couches, because people are not just going to like know that. And certainly the AI agents are not just going to know that unless you create content that distinctly says that, puts it on channels that you own, whether those are social media channels or your website.
And so honestly, those are easy, like tactical things. If you're a small business owner and like go and look at top queries related to your, area of business, and literally like include those things in your Google My Business description. Like, update. This has always been a best practice. I would say now is like more than ever, go and do those things. Like that's easy, low hanging fruit. And quite frankly, you're probably going to be in a better position than a lot of, larger organizations to like have some outsized wins in the next like 12 to 18 months.
Another
speed matters always.
Another big emphasis from Gary in this week's AI offsite was in terms of like durable advantage, and like once you play the whole game out, what's kind of like the thing?
Brand. It all gets back to our core thesis.
It's like another player can be superior in like hacking, adopting AI, but if you have that much brand power, where it's like I just am willing, even if there's more friction, you're bulletproof.
Yeah.
So it's like this has
value,
always been
value accrues. Like
yeah.
you will, at some point you lose it.
Yeah.
Which I think is the perfect way to sort of like wrap this up is while there will always be shifts in the way that consumers discover information, the way that consumers are looking for information, they're finding it in the future. Maybe agents are even proactively serving it to them. Oh, you're on your way to Hudson Yards. Stop here for your cold brew, whatever the case is, which I do think is a future that's not too distant. At the end of the day, if you are a company or a brand who has the power to say like, oh, I want this person to just think I want a Jack's, think I want a Starbucks in their mind, then you can like jump the whole
exactly.
thing. And to close on the brand, because this is always one of our favorite hot topics with clients, is the value of paying for your brand search terms.
Mm-hmm.
Gary is anti. We have seen all of the research that says there is incrementality. Where's your thought on that one?
I mean, that's an interesting one where it's like, regardless of where you stand on it, that just might be subsumed. It's like you can't pay to play like.
And then let's unpack what we mean by that with like paying for your brand search terms.
Yeah. Like talking, paid search and when someone searches VaynerMedia, we are not just relying on organic to get the job done.
We don't get paid. We don't have a budget for that. But
there's like a lot of this comes down to just get the truth, like objective reality, more so mapping to the internet of. You're not going to be able to as much use pay to play or other tactics to kind of maintain an edge when you're a commoditized or even like not the greatest option. Obviously, ads is a whole different universe. We'll have to have a follow up, but
I'm just playing around with this right now because you just said it. I just typed into google.com VaynerMedia and I turned it into AI mode and it tells me, it actually says, think of a more detailed search. Which is like, it's actually prompting you to get more advanced than just being like a basic searcher so that it can give you a better result.
Yeah, because the average query length that most triggers AI overviews or where users get the most value from conversational AI is, unsurprisingly, the longer the query, kind of like the more impactful the AI search conversational can be. And Google also talks about that in terms of how they're very non-overlapping in nature, these two different query groups. Joanne from Google, we had a great session the other day where Google came here and we jammed on this for an hour. Said, I just pulled it up to remember. We're moving from
number one question on VaynerMedia. What does VaynerMedia actually do? It's a good question.
Great question. I mean, it's like social media. Google said we're moving from an era of precision to prediction. This was more in the lens of like search account structures and like exact match queries and this and that to more like coverage, like your holistic library, like embodied presence on the internet, and does it best map to predict or deliver on what is known. There is no
and again, we've read this book before, right? Like this was it happened, chapter 1 happened a bit before this, but there was a exclamation point like post iOS 14.5 and Meta, and like this idea of think through this more broadly, embrace, give the keys to this system and allow a multitude of signals to determine what ads being served, et cetera. So Google's always been nested in this keyword first, and they toyed around, PMax here, et cetera. But when you think about ad products, that's a necessary condition for them. I think the other interesting bit on this is there's a little bit of serenity, I think, in the idea that an advertising business model is so resilient. It's like a proven effective business model. So at some point, this comes back around. Like at some point, it will be monetized.
Yeah, it will be mapped to GDP.
Yeah. And as of June, like ads are showing up in AI overviews, in AI mode. Like that hadn't even been happening really till back half of this year.
Okay, so this is like only a month old that this is showing up.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of the fundamental things are still the same. The 4 key things that are actionable takeaways are you have to produce more content, as we always say. Roll out across these AI-enabled platforms, start testing into their paid capabilities. It's early days, but like always, there's sometimes that first mover advantage.
And that's where Google is really like sure, Perplexity has sponsored follow-up questions, but
that is very small.
like
It's really
really
small.
sweating, and we have it in here for folks that want to know the exact specifics. There's AI Max for search. You have to be using broad match to show up in AI overviews or AI
And I
mode.
would say candidly, like it's not all there. So the thing here is really like go in and strategically test and like
But
come
some of
back
those
from
broad
those
match
learnings.
searches are going to be out of like
Yeah,
completely
exactly.
Exactly.
online.
So
Google's not just doing broad match because they like want full. It's like
Yeah.
the queries are just so different. Yeah.
But like test it strategically like every month for the next 18 months, because these are the products that are going to go on this journey and like might not be there right now, or you might be seeing waste, or you might be seeing like, funky delivery or things like that. And so come back to it. Like there's going to be change and disruption. And so like get a really focused game plan on these specific ad products, these specific ad features, and like test around them.
Okay, I think we can probably take this last slide down. But I think that, I'll close on one thing that I've really always admired about working with Ben and Jon is that they're really like media generalists in understanding all of these different parts and pieces. If I think back to, when I worked at Google, actually, there was such a specialism of like, you're an SEO person or you're an SEM person. And across the last, 15 years, that's always been like blurring together, like social and digital and like traditional. All of this stuff sort of pulls in. If you are a person who is like hyper specialized just in search, what do you advise those people do?
Yeah, I mean, and Google, straight from Google's mouth, like the era of the highly matrixed, perfect Google search ad account with, an enormous volume of permutations, keywords,
like 3,000 campaigns and like a zillion ad groups.
Like that's where folks who've grown up in the Meta TikTok ads era of just like set up the right signals and integrations, can algo-based bidding, and then let it cook. The paid search hyper-focused need to get much more comfortable with this bit more probabilistic, bit of less control, but no shortage of variables and levers to pull. And this goes back to a broader thing happening as a media buyer and trade. Like media and creative are just collapsing into one kind of thing. Like creative is the variable, and then how much you are feeding signals and data and IP into these systems to keep an edge.
Yeah, I feel like, there are many cases where we do a bunch of different things for clients, and sometimes they're full media agencies, sometimes we're just a component of that. To me, I think these things coming together will also make clients want to consolidate their media efforts, because it's not how it used to be, where you need to have these like a zillion specialists. So you need to look at the whole picture and then allocate with agility between the channels that are ultimately driving performance.
Yes. Yeah. Like integrated, like we've always been a creative plus media shop, like now more than ever for a myriad of reasons. That's like essential.
Necessary condition.
Yeah.
And also like back to your point around the creative is also how people are going to discover your brand.
Yeah, exactly.
It all sort of like works together. So we're back to the Don Draper era, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been an amazing session. Saw some really nice comments. So if you are interested in getting the full report, VaynerMedia.com/reports, it will be the top one posted there shortly. If you're watching this after the fact, thank you so much for tuning in. Any questions or things that you're curious about, follow along on our LinkedIn, on our YouTube, or wherever you're discovering this video. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.